Mexican cartels engage in open warfare against the government. I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. The situation in Mexico is somewhat hard to describe. The base facts are clear. Mexican drug cartels are out of control. The current environment is one of open warfare against the government. It mirrors certain aspects of a civil war and also has aspects of terrorism. The cartels are so powerful, they can actually go toe-to-toe with the military in Mexico. How the country got to that point is another story, but today we'll focus on the current state of affairs and potential solutions. Briefly though, things began as simple corruption between the government and small drug gangs. What happened is they bribed these public officials to get away with small-time operations. Eventually, though, these operations grew and the profits became gigantic. Eventually, cartels were able to scare public officials via threat of violence. They would still give them bribes to keep them quiet and to keep them sane, but this time, the power was on their side. And the cartels were extremely violent. They would kill you, and they would kill your family, and they'd hang you from a tree to show everyone else what happens if you cross them. And once they got to that point, it became hard to stop them. It's important to have people with integrity in government, otherwise evil will grow. And when it grows to a point where the only way to fight it is with courage, many public officials don't have that. Now, the Sinaloa cartel is one of the many cartels that operates in Mexico, and it's the focus of the current violence erupting in Mexico. They supply drugs internationally, and they're massive, one of the largest. Joaquin Gomez, also known as El Chapo, was the previous head of that cartel, and he was put away for life in a U.S. prison. And it's important to note that he's in the highest security American prison out there. Nobody has escaped from it, and it's important that he is in America. If he was in Mexico, well, it's very likely he'd break out, as he did twice already. So, with his removal, his son, Ovidio, he now holds some of his dad's power and wealth, and along with his brothers, they're somewhat the de facto leaders of the Sinaloa cartel. And more specifically, the individual who was captured, El Chapo's son, which led to the eruption of violence, Ovidio, was the head of the fentanyl division. Now, aside from the constant state of fear and violence and drug addiction that the cartels impose onto Mexico, they also inflict massive pain around the world. Fentanyl is a highly addictive drug where people can easily overdose, and much of that supply is coming illicitly. They play a major role in all the drug problems that we see across Canada. Now, since El Chapo's son was arrested, media are reporting 10 soldiers have been killed along with 19 cartel operatives. And violence is just everywhere on the streets. There were vehicles that were set on fire. Cartel commando squads were clashing with police and Mexican soldiers. Even gunfire was ringing through airports. And reportedly, aircraft was hit. Now, in terms of tackling the issue, there are some obvious challenges. First of all, there is a Hydra effect. When you cut the head off of a Hydra, another one comes in to replace it. And that's exactly what will happen with this cartel. You can take out El Chapo's son, but his second in command, or a motivated upstart, will grow to fill that role. There are systematic issues in the country that have to be fixed. Taking out the heads of a drug cartel are just going to leave you with a new head in the coming months. Another challenge here is the unknown network of conspirators. Just who exactly is under the payroll of the cartel? It's hard to know. Reportedly, it goes all the way to the top of government in some cases. Your plans of operation can be leaked. They can break out of prison. They can have an easy trial. They can have the judge scared for his life. All of these things factor into the complexity of the issue. Next, there is a massive demand for drugs around the world. This is a problem external to Mexico. They have to have customers to thrive, and they have many. That's an indictment on North America, Europe, and all the other markets they export to. We're contributing to that horror show, and also destroying ourselves by this intake of illicit drug substances. You also have cartels now diversifying their income streams, and this is the biggest X against the argument of just legalizing all drugs. There are people who believe that by legalizing everything, including fentanyl and all the illicit drugs that the cartel exports, their business will dry up, because the government and corporations will fill the void. Well, I don't believe that to be true. The cartel are not idiots, and they can also adapt. They've already done so. They've diversified into things ranging from fentanyl to avocados. They're going to stick around. And the way they do business is not good for anyone. And even if we legalized all drugs, do you think they'd really dry up? Or would they find a way to become legal operatives? And there's the question if they would retain their violent tendencies, but I don't see any reason to believe that they wouldn't. Despite all these challenges, there is hope. There are a couple of resolutions that we can keep in mind while traversing this challenge. First of all, Mexico will 100% need American cooperation. The Mexican government has proved itself incompetent when dealing with cartels, and that's a fact. Even now, they don't have things under control. Even when exporting their top criminals, they send them to America because they know that the Mexican justice system cannot accountably hold these people. They'll just break out due to corruption deep in through the system. America has to be involved. It has to be a partnership, and I'd be open to Canada getting involved too. Really, there is a joint interest here. The cartels harm everyone, either through the supply of drugs, destroying tourism, or harming local communities. None of it's good. And Mexico also has to get itself a government without fear, and that's easier said than done. The reason why the cartel is so powerful is because people have things to lose and they fear that. The cartel would leverage that against you. You have a family that you love, you have pets, anything. They'll take them hostage, they'll kill them, they'll keep you in line. Now, I know it's a lot to ask, but the way to conquer that is only through courage. And we need people in power positions who perhaps don't have much to lose. People without families that can be taken hostage, or, instead, going back to the cooperation route, family and loved ones who are protected by the American government in a joint cooperation objective. Now, some may say that's a lot to ask, but when you're in a situation like this, the only solution comes through sacrifice. The Mexican government has let things get to this point. Now they have to dig in and really deal with it to rid themselves of these parasites. Whenever a country gets bad, it gets there one step at a time. It started off with harmless bribe taking by little small gangster groups, and now you have cartels that rival your military. The buck has to stop somewhere. We'll also need the help of local Mexican communities, those in Sinaloa and across the country. Many people are fed up with the oppressive regime that the cartels have imposed upon them, but once again, they're very afraid to speak out. But if they feel supported, if they feel the government is not corrupt, and they won't hang them out to dry, if the American military stations soldiers and operatives in places that they can be relied upon by local community members, there is going to be a will to improve things organically. We have to capture that essence and hold people accountable. Societal norms are actually quite impactful if they have the potential to be upheld. Right now, the cartel is just too powerful to be bent to any rule. But if that power dynamic shifts, the people can hold their neighbors and peers accountable through means that don't have to rely on violence. You see this across the globe, actually. There are many norms in countries that aren't laws, per se, but the community will hold you accountable if you break them. You'll be shunned, ostracized, called out, all of that. Now, this would have been more effective prior to the cartels becoming giants of power. But if we can elevate them back to a prior status of small-time operations, that's where the community can get involved to shut things down further. And finally, we do have to be real with ourselves. For groups like the cartel, the harshest of consequences are called for. The cartel are bringing elements of terrorism, civil war, and general warfare to this country. Ask yourself how you would react if a group like ISIS was organically wreaking havoc in Canada. What types of consequences would you call for that? What types of reaction would be warranted? What would you be willing to sacrifice to rid the country of such a menace? Not just for you, but for future generations, your children and their children. That's the level of threat that the Mexican people are grappling with. Just imagine how much more prosperous that country could be if they were liberated from this horror show. Mexico, Canada, and America representing North America on the global stage, without any violent crime hindrances, with better trade routes, with better tourism, better economic deals. That's all possible, and it would benefit everyone. But there are some roadblocks that have to be addressed before we can get there. Now, that does bring us to the end of our conversation for today. If you enjoyed the material, be sure to leave a review and share. That'll help us grow. And you can find me online at perryplatform.org and on social media at perryplatform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.